wow, this is a real thing. And like boo-hoo for many people, like, oh, the CEO gets lonely at the top. But it is a real thing. As you know, Michael, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and there's not a lot of people that are in that same role. So it is a lonely position.
We certainly have the sense of the doom loop, as you describe it. At the highest level, you've got to be aligned on how you're going to be able to do it. If you don't have that, you can't make anything else happen. You're going to have failings, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. These are all opportunities for growth and becoming more successful.
What are we about? What are we signed up for? Where do we want to go? Because here's the reality is things are constantly changing and partnerships change quickly for a lot of different reasons. And I think it's important to always go back and reflect on it.
Michael, welcome to the Escape the CEO Doom Loop podcast. John and I and a couple of our Metronomics coach colleagues interviewed 72 CEOs and analyzed the data, put it all together into the CEO playbook. One of the things that came out of the analysis was we dubbed the CEO Doom Loop, kind of inspired by Jim Collins. But it really is this thing, and both John and I ran companies as well. And it's something that it really struck us as like, wow, this is a real thing. And like boo-hoo for many people, like, oh, the CEO gets lonely at the top. But it is a real thing. As you know, Michael, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and there's not a lot of people that are in that same role. So it is a lonely position. And many of us who find ourselves there, I'm like, how did I get here? Kind of like that Talking Head song. And where is the playbook? Where's the manual? No one trained me for all of this. And so what John and I do here is really talking to CEOs and building this community of CEOs and owners to learn together and to learn from one another and collaborate. And it's really rewarding. So this podcast is something that we really love doing, and we're really appreciated to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Good to see you, Glenn. And again, so excited to have the conversation.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump in a little bit. So, one of the first things we want to talk about is how we got to this point. I got introduced to Michael through a relationship I had with another client, and said, hey, I got this guy, you should probably talk to him. And I remember initially trying to get a hold of Mike was really hard. He was super busy. And I'm like, gosh, is this guy...
Is that true? I don't remember this part of this.
I was like, gosh, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't need the help, or it wasn't that important. And we finally got together. We had a really good conversation. He's a principal founder of InForm Studio. He's one of 3 principals that own the organization. And from a strategic direction, a vision perspective, felt like there was some lack of alignment at the top of the organization about where we're going to go directionally. So that was really the start. A couple of his partners, Gina and Ken, we had just a couple-hour session about kind of strategic direction of the organization, where were they aligned, where they weren't aligned. The most important thing for organizations to be successful at partnerships is partnership aligned. Like, where are we going? And if that isn't there, if that's not in place, if you're not aligned at the top about where you're going, it just is really hard to go anywhere. And so that was really kind of how we started our relationship. And there's been peaks and valleys. There's been some stuff that was difficult and painful to deal with. And there's been some stuff where the organization didn't execute at the level it needed to. But then there's been also things that I think have gotten a lot better. And I think the future for the organization is really, really positive. So that's a little bit of the backdrop. So Mike, can you give us just an overview of what InForm Studio does as an organization and your role in the organization?
I can definitely do that. We came into John, we went through the traction, the EOS kind of process. And what we were finding in that is we were trying to self-do that, and that wasn't working very well. That's probably why I was too busy to take John's call. So to be able to put words to what is our purpose, inspire, and impact was really critical for us. That ripples out to all the people that we work with, be it clients, colleagues, consultants, et cetera. So I think the amazing thing is we're a multidisciplinary design firm, big word for like, we're architects, urban designers, engineers, interior designers. And our mission, how we do impacting, is essentially trying to accomplish this through a mission of changing the design and delivery process of the built environment. Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to make the most memorable places on the planet. people be able to experience those in amazing ways. We really look to harness technology in order to accomplish that, both on the design side and then partnering with organizations on the construction side. So I'm still a little comfortable with like the CEO moniker. I technically don't have that. That's not what I'm called in our
Okay.
organization.
All right.
John and I kind of like go back and forth. This was like all of what I just described. I just knew that it made sense for me to help lead that. And I just wanted to be a good leader. And what does that look like? So we may even get into this, what the framework of our organization is, but we started with 2 partners. It's Gina and I now. I would say we actually work a little bit more like the EOS model where I'm the visionary and she's more of the integrator. What I do is vision, innovation, culture, strategy is kind of the world that I live in. So that's a little bit about InForm and a bit about my role in it.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the EOS. So both my companies, we used EOS, and ultimately I found it to be a great execution system. Where I got held up was the lack of strategy. And I think even really the lack of having a coach for me as the CEO, implement a system. So I hear you there, because I think using the sports analogy that if you really want to be a next level player in whatever role you're in, I think you need that outside coaching, someone to watch you play the game that's not part of the game.
We love the sports analogies.
All
I
right.
like that John uses them. We relate to them. We have a couple people in our office, I'm like teaching you football through the analogies of we use coaching within this, but it's probably the best, I think, analogy, like how you want the human interaction to happen in your organization.
Yeah. John talked about your first meeting together. I'd love to hear from your perspective of how you approached that first meeting, especially how you brought along your partners. I'm really curious to hear how that conversation went and what was in your head as you sat down with potentially engaging with a business coach.
Yeah, my 2 partners who are a husband and wife team, their first employee. And when I worked with them, it was probably one of these things where I think they were happy they hired me and terrified that they hired me at the same time because my ambition level was like really through the ceiling. It was kind of a consistent pushing and pushing and pushing. But I had an incredible mentoring relationship with my partners probably for 6+ years of knowing them. And then we got to a point where it was like, hey, this is what I want to do within an organization. And we kind of sat down and it was sort of like, do I move on or do I stay with them? And they had another partner at the time too. So they were like, let's set up a new company. And here's the sort of vision for it. Here's what we want to do. And a lot of what I laid out, and this was 25 years ago, it wasn't articulated very specifically, but that was the vision at that time. Even right away, we were involved in the Grand Egyptian Museum competition in Cairo, which there's like 1,700 firms, and we were like the only North American firm to make it. And so very early on, we had this kind of ambition. And we went through a period for probably our first 15 years where we were only 10 to 15 people. So when we grew, that's when we found that alignment maybe wasn't there. And we had a group come in who worked specifically with design and architecture firms. We had a really good session with them, but you could just feel that the trust factor with that group was not there among all the principals.
Okay.
And so I had an opportunity to be introduced to John. It must have been like, hey, when the light went on, I was like, we need to get with somebody that all 3 of us are going to feel good about and trust, because we needed to do something. We needed organizational framework. Our communication wasn't there. We were just stumbling all over ourselves, trying to scale and get larger. It wasn't working well. We were successful as a company, but not in a way that you really want to see the kind of trajectory go.
You were winning ugly.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that. I mean, use that. Thank you, Glenn. And so coming into that meeting, I was like, we all need to walk away with a good trust. And that's what John demonstrated within this is somebody who had business experience, acumen for it, but he was there to build a relationship with us. And that really helped to move things. So we struggled for a while getting aligned around things, just different ways that we wanted to do things after having been in business for 15 years. People change and things change. His advice to that was, if you want to do this, you need to get aligned on these things. And that was 8 years, man. I remember that day really well because it was kind of like 2015 is when we started. And then it was 2017 is when we connected with John.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a great story.
So it's kind of one of those high pressure things where we have to have these conversations, especially with partners, and they're really hard. And they're your peer. It's not like it's a boss to subordinate or, hey, we're all equals in this thing. There's some things that aren't working right. We have to be able to talk about this stuff. And so how do we start to get that stuff out and have those kind of uncomfortable conversations? That was the beginning of it.
Everybody's journey and path is very different within this.
Absolutely.
But these were people I worked for, right? And mentored me and became extremely close friends. So how do you have that conversation? This was much less about business partnership and much more about what is the quality of this relationship? And I don't want the degradation quality of that relationship to happen over this company.
Yep.
We were doing all of those things. But there was definitely at some point, it's like, listen, for both of our human health and everything within this, we got to be able to have these conversations and move forward with this. And I think ultimately that was very valuable to be able to look at it that way, and relationships that I hope to maintain for the rest of my life.
No, that's great. That's really great, Mike, because I think if you lead with your heart, you have the good intentions, then you can sort things out, right? You can work it out. So, John, I'd love to ask those questions. I know I'm straying a little bit off script here, but as a coach and potentially you're approaching Mike and Gina, and who was the third partner, Mike?
Ken.
In this conversation, and everybody's usually coming at it from a different kind of perspective. And John, what approach do you take? Because I think Mike brought up really first and foremost, it's less about what are your credentials and what's your system. It's like, can we trust this guy? Can we trust this person? So how do you approach that, John?
Well, I mean, that day, that was all about how do we get the principles aligned at the highest level about where do we want to go organizationally. So Mike is super purpose-driven. I would say that Mike is one of the most purpose-driven executives I work with. You hear it, his eyes lit up when he talks about the organizational purpose. His eyes lit up in the planning sessions when we talk about the kind of work that they're pursuing and how that's going to change the world. So it's really powerful to work for that. So it's really around that essence of, as an organization, what can we all start to get aligned at the highest level? So there's all this stuff beneath it that we can fight about or bicker about. Well, let's kind of take that out and let's start to really focus on at the highest level. What are we about? What do we sign up for? Where do we want to go? And I think that's important to do that consistently, because here's the reality is things are constantly changing and partnerships change quickly for a lot of different reasons. And I think it's important to always go back and reflect on, okay, why do we sign up to do this together? Is that the same or different? And then where do we want to go? Where's the next kind of vision where we want to go organizationally? And let's really work to get aligned around that. So that was really what that day was about. And it wasn't perfect, but I think it was a start.
Let me add a little bit to that too, because this is really interesting, the timing of this conversation. Agree with John. I am highly purpose driven. I love to see the results of it. And the relationships that I have with our people are incredibly valuable to me. But I had the experience yesterday. We're working on this riverfront resiliency project. But there happens to be a pedestrian bridge that we did here that was completed about 5 or 6 years ago. And they were having like a little bit of this like event out on the bridge. It's become fairly iconic within the city, Van Leaston Memorial Bridge. So we go out to this thing, and Jordan, he's been with us for a number of years, experienced the bridge, sort of a rainy day period, but there's always people there. But we were walking out, and it was in the evening, there was sunset, they were doing this water fire, and there's people doing like bubbles on the bridge. There's a concert on the bridge. And he's like, man, this is really cool to see how this impacted the city and the community, and to see the difference that it was making. So I came from kind of the movie industry to start with, and to take like creative ability and see it on the screen, but then it's gone. Like you do something like this and it's in the physical world and people are able to touch it, and you're watching like kids running around and bringing their dogs. And I've seen people get proposed to on this bridge, and it's like,
it's amazing.
That is such a meaningful thing to be able to be a part of. That's what we want to communicate to people all through our organization, is how can we make that kind of impact and inspire people. Sometimes it's something as ambitious as that, but we take it into the smallest project that we do and say, well, how do we make a difference?
Mike, I think you did a really eloquent job of talking about InForm, and I think I picked up on your big, hairy, audacious goal, but would you mind sharing that with us?
I mean, it's basically to create the most memorable places in the world. And so we have one. We just heard a couple of days. I don't know what it is about Providence, Rhode Island. Maybe we do our best work there, but we did what's called a Gateway Center. It's kind of a visitor center for Roger Williams Park. Just won a national award and has been really exciting to be able to see. So those types of things to watch people use these spaces and places is just incredibly rewarding. And we would love nothing better than to just have a catalog of these kinds of things all over the world, really, and just create great experiences and memories for people. So that idea of purpose and what it means to have memories, this is like who we are internally, what makes us move. And so to make great places and experiences, those are the things that people take away in those memories. So it's a really big part for us.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for sharing that. Let's turn the conversation a little bit here. So, Mike, I know you were one of the CEOs interviewed, or as we would say, head of company, right? Even though you might not like the title CEO.
Yeah.
But
that works much better. Thank you.
All right. Because I know you do the functional accountability chart, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it sounds like Gina then is in the COO or that operations role, as you said, as integrator.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we work really well together. But you had described this kind of loneliness. I never feel that.
That's great. Wow.
Because it's a true partnership. And we lean on our advisory council now more than ever, but I've always desired to do that. And our advisory council is kind of our leadership group. So I feel less the loneliness. However, we certainly have the sense of the doom loop as you describe it. That's pretty dark name for it, but well, we've been there the night you cannot sleep.
That's right. That's those 3 a.m. thoughts. Well, Michael, would you mind sharing with us about a time that you found yourself in what we call the CEO doom loop?
Yeah, we probably referenced it. It was probably in that period. 2017 is what I would call like the start of a long one. We were like 10 to 15 employees, and then we had quickly grown to about 25. And we just struggled immensely with a new organizational framework. How do you shift from working in the business to working on 100%. The business?
Yep.
Things that we struggled with. How do you delegate with empowerment? Sometimes we were delegating, but it's like, all right, well, we're going to shortcut off all your decision making, or you need to check in with me on all these kinds of things. Whatever. That kind of non-organic communication. So when you're 10 to 15, everybody's kind of working with each other. You all just pretty much know. Suddenly you had to formalize this a little bit more. A lot of people wouldn't know what's going on in the organization. What's even important to us? What are we working on? You start to realize this becomes more and more difficult. And as we scaled more, it got worse. We were like 40 people. This wasn't working. John led off with this. The most critical factor was our lack of alignment in leadership. How are we organizing ourselves? Who's responsible for what? We need to be comfortable with the trust factor of hiring good people and letting them do what they need to do. And I think that lack of clarity, multiple ways of doing things, we didn't have the InForm way of doing things, just manifested itself at times, low morale, and then maybe like cycles of where people would move on. And some of them were really good people. So it was kind of doom loop, I feel like sounds like something like this. It was more cyclical like this, but we were riding in it the whole time. And you'd pay attention to it at certain times when the symptoms became greater. But the kind of illness side of it was still there. We hadn't solved this. And I think we were successful developing an amazing reputation, but we were stagnant in getting to the next level for what I would say is this like 8 years in it. And it's really new.
Wow.
I think we're at a point where we're coming out of that doom cycle. We're highly aligned, and tell people even this year, like some of the struggles that we're even dealing with this year, we're paying now for the sins of the past. But as we're coming out of this, our advisory council, you're starting to see a lot more empowerment within it. We've specifically gravitated towards, John put us into metronome, and I think we were a little bit on it before, but we weren't using it. Now to have a cohesive location for all our information. And I actually love the
Mhm.
to-do list more than it. Check that box on me, man. Give me
There's
my
something
thing.
about that,
Remind me
right?
to do
Check.
that. Great. Send me,
Turns it
give me an
Yeah.
action item. Give me an action item. Give me that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
Who
being
does
in the
what by when?
cycle of daily huddles, people have to have their stuff on there, our tactical meetings happening regularly. You can just
Yep.
see. And I think the first thing you have to do is make the council believe, because we're 8 years doing it a different way. So when does that feel like it's taken hold? And that feels like it's taking hold. And then does the rest of the organization see that too within the leadership? And even though we have this very interesting parallel of some incredibly exciting things going on and some
Mhm.
incredibly challenging, difficult things in parallel with one another. But people are starting to trust the leadership in a way that was there before. We were a good organization, but I really think we have the opportunity now to become a good to great organization at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic.
A couple key things there, Glenn. Like one of the
Yeah.
things is Mike goes back and kind of talks about the evolution of the organization. So when you go from 15 people to 40 people, one of the things that the business needed to put in place was process. So what was happening, you have 15 people, is you had this small group of people, everybody's kind of like, hey, what's going on with that? They're so close and connected that we could
Yeah.
change quickly, right? And still stay on task and deliver great work. But when you get to 40, you got to put leadership structure in place. You got to put processes in place. And so that's still, I would say, a work in progress that we're working, getting better at that. I think that is getting better. And knowing who we want to hire for what roles in the organization, what does that scorecard look like for success? So we're really re-looking at all that work again today, even after all these years of working together, because the organization is evolving. And the other part of it, and Mike was talking about this too with Metronome, is in the last 6 to 8 months that the organization has given advisory council, which is the leadership team of the organization, visibility into really financial numbers and how the organization is performing.
Yeah. Good.
And I can tell you as a coach, kind of being in and talking to the team, like there's unbelievable power with them really understanding like what's our cash position. And in our last planning session, like, gosh, it wasn't where we want it to be. What do we have to do differently? So there's this collective cohesion at the top of the organization because they're all bought in and they have visibility. And it's just really powerful to be able to part of that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that's going from a smaller company to a large organization. I know from experience is that a lot of owners, especially if they're owners or partners in the company, are kind of reticent about sharing financial information. But actually, it's so empowering because there's so many times that people in the company, they make these assumptions. They think, well, they see the top line revenue and think, oh, they're making so much money. They don't realize that many times as an owner, your house is on the line or you're personally signed for these things. And the costs are incredible. No one's making as much money as most people think they are. So, but also I think the fact of, hey, if everybody sees the healthy financial condition and is working towards it, there's a much more sense of relief versus like, oh, there's a fear economy happening right now, or am I going to lose my job? Or are we going out of business?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We lived in that for a little bit because if you only look at a single metric, and that's kind of like what we would do, and you're not hitting that goal, that tells you all kinds of things that may not be the case. So it was like, okay, what are we communicating and all that? What are we trying to communicate? What's important? And I think that's been big. And it's funny because I go back to that accountability side and working with John, he keeps you accountable as like a group too. And I remember we came in one time, not too distant past, and he just looked at us, he's like, what are we doing here, guys? This is the same
John saying
stuff
that.
that's needed to be done for 8 years. Like, what are we doing here? It was like very strong. And we were all like, let's get this. And it's been interesting because when we talked about communicating it, it's really easy to do the BHAG, right? And he talks a lot about it. Hey, it's 1% vision, 99% execution. And what was interesting about this is, you have the BHAG and that gives everybody the inspiration. But it was our 3HAG, our highly achievable goals. We didn't even know. So even trying to understand, what does that mean? And so we implemented this thing. This has actually been pretty fun. It's called 5 Minutes with Carly, who's our marketing coordinator. She's in our marketing group. And every single person in the organization has to spend 5 minutes with Carly. We video it. And basically they give the 1 minute elevator pitch of our 3HAG.
I love that.
That's awesome.
And so they start with being able to communicate expectations and our goals. That's super important. That's where we want to be. Everybody knows what they are. So they kind of run down that list. we need to have experience in our 3 to 4 market sectors, and they kind of list them: civic, community, cultural, which is our 3 C's, mixed use and urban design, and then our prototype work. And then kind of getting into, hey, we have to have our processes in place. We need to be able to execute those really well. And then ultimately that's going to allow us to achieve our financial goals and to be where we need to be. So we have those
Absolutely.
4 pillars, looking at communication, our sector expertise, our processes being really strong. And then the 4th is that financial stability and firm foundation. And being 25-year anniversary this year, to be able to say, this is where we want to be 3 years from now, seems crazy. It's even being able to communicate that and know everybody's on that path. And then to be able to look and say, we're actually doing all 4 of those things. And so that was a really big deal for us to look at. So in our all office meetings, we're presenting them. Everybody, here they are in video. So you're not only getting the opportunity to do it, but you're hearing everybody else kind of like say it in their own words so that everybody knows what we're about. And they go through our mission, purpose, and core values too, which is great. I think those things, like, what's the execution side and how do we do that well?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know you're doing that. So the format of this is they spend 5 minutes with Carly. They run through all of this kind of who are we as an organization, where we're going. Everybody's got to be able to talk about that. And then are you publishing that to the rest of the team? Is that what you're doing with that?
So what we do is it's on our agenda for the all office meeting. 5 minutes of Carly comes up and then she plays the video.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
Everybody sees with 4 people a month do it, right?
I love that.
And it's basically 1 minute per person. They run through the elevator speech thing. And she asks them the questions, mission, purpose, that. But the tough one is the 3 hag, right? And it's not like you're not listing bullet points. You're telling it in your story. So it's not rote memorization. It's like, be able to tell about InForm. What are we doing? What's important to us right now? What are we trying to accomplish in 3 years? And they kind of run that down. So it's 4 to 5 minutes in an all office meeting. People are very engaged in it. I kind of did it with somebody else, sort of the first one. And now everybody's like, oh, okay. You know, they're aware of what's coming and everybody's excited to do it. So we have a sign up list, and I think Tuesdays and Thursdays
that idea.
to get it set up for everybody.
That's super
that's
powerful.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That's a true way in to buy in, right? If everybody's feeding it back in their own words and their interpretation, then ultimately you'll know that everybody is on that same page, right? You've got your 1-page plan in Metronome, you got your BHAG, you've got your 3HAG, and having everybody internalize that they need to then, with Carly, get that back out.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congrats. I love that.
Thank you. We'll let you know how it goes when we get to the end of it. We'll play a few for you, John.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Mike. So let's go back again. You guys are on a great track, and I can see them. You've been doing it for a while because it takes time, right? A lot of people, John and I will start with a client and they'll be like, well, how long was this? 90 days? Is this like a 1-year program and then we're done and we graduate? And I'm like, no, sorry. We have no magic wand, right?
Yeah.
It's work. There's no doubt about it. And it sounds like you understand that, but yet now you're really seeing the payoff, right?
You never stop coaching a team. There's always a coach for the team.
100%.
So there's always something new to work on. There's always new players that are coming in. You're developing the games. The game changes. We don't play 100%. It the way we did 25 years ago. Yeah. You got to have it all the time.
I learned this lesson early on. I started working, they were a luxury residential construction builder, and the CEO and the president, we were about 9 months in, and we were on a call. They said, hey, Glenn, we're probably like 3/4 of the way through this program, right? But we'll have graduated by the end of the year. And I was like, what? And I said, you're telling me like when the team wins the Super Bowl, they're walking off and they say, what are you going to do next? They say, we're firing our coach and we're going to coach ourselves next year. Like, no. And they both go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we got to be thoughtful about time. You got 9 minutes left. So
I know we got 9 minutes.
So,
all right, let's fire off a few questions. Here's one thing I know. Like, I want you to, if you can be vulnerable with us, give us one thing that as a leader you tolerated for too long.
Ooh, that's hard to summarize like into one thing. I would say oftentimes it seemed as though we would tolerate a lot of things. It probably comes back to where we led with getting alignment and then committing to the process of accountability. That would be if I had to summarize it into one thing. If you don't have that, you can't make anything else happen. You have to be aligned on what you're looking to do, how you're going to do it, because there's different ways of doing things. At the highest level, you've got to be aligned on how you're going to be able to do it. And then really trusting the people you empowered to deliver on those goals. And I think that was a methodology of getting aligned around that. And then not only that, but then to be able to say, okay, in the empowerment of allowing you guys to deliver on the goals and what we're trying to accomplish, how do we support you and how do we get obstacles out of your way? So John talks about A players a lot, which I think we've always kind of like thought we had A players, and maybe being a little bit more specific on the evaluation, and not only on the evaluation, but then coaching. How can we coach people to get to be A players? Once they're operating at that level and they feel like they have the trust, get the crap out of their way so that they can go do what they do well. Like, what are you running into? So summation, I suppose I tolerated poor leadership for a long time, and that included me. Because at the end of the day, you start to realize you're the problem. And that was very self-reflection. And some of that meant, hey, there's some difficult obstacles to kind of get through or move around or get out of there. And I would say it took a long time for me to be comfortable with doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. I know it's not always easy. John, I'm curious from your perspective as the coach on the sidelines and watching Michael, what do you think were some of the things that you guys worked on together to overcome?
Well, I would say that the A player thing, we talk about this a ton, right? Gunn and I talk about this all of our clients. It was a big part of what we talked about in our lunch and learn on Wednesday. So the real understanding of, do we have the right people to help us execute the purpose that Mike is so excited about, right? I think that's really important one. I think the other part of this is Mike's willingness to be vulnerable and to hear the truth. And we've been through some things with his team where things were showing up and the team was like frustrated with some of his leadership styles, the way he showed up. And not intentionally, I can tell you, because I know his heart. I know the kind of person he is. I know he's all about. But sometimes in the throes of like something you care about deeply, it doesn't show up, right? I do the same thing. He's been really willing to hear what were the things he needed to as a leader to improve. And not staying stuck. We've talked about the book, what got you here won't get you there. I think he lives that. And I think he's focused on getting better and having some really hard conversations with people that work with him in the organization. And I think that they really respect that he's willing to have open and listen and not kind of defend himself, but just sit in it when people bring those thoughts and concerns and frustrations and fears, right? It takes a lot of guts for somebody to want to go to the owner of a company and have those kind of hard conversations because they care deeply about organization. They care deeply about the role. They care about what they do. They care about you. That's hard to do. And he's been really, really good at that. And I think
that's great.
He's done a great job of evolving as a leader and growing as a leader and understanding what his role is. So I think we see that happening across a broader organization. So I'm excited to be part of that for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think sometimes you want to be successful at what you're doing. I'm very competitive at heart, and what's driving me is because I want to be able to inspire and impact. It's the purpose for it, and I want to feel like we're succeeding at that. And then when you're getting the areas that it's like, well, I'm failing in these things, does that calculate to you as being unsuccessful? And what you have to realize is that you're going to have failings, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. These are all opportunities for growth and becoming more successful. And so it was a learning process for me to be able to say, I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm not perfect at everything I do. Where I failed to be out there, help me learn what can I do to be better. And you start to realize that then that mindset helps for everybody. Then everybody becomes a little bit less defensive. What could I be working on? And everybody's just working to improve. So we also talk about Nick Saban in the process. And this has been a constant conversation that we've had in our meetings with John. And it's just like commit to the process. And part of that is just like, on the personal side, you've got to get better at what you're doing. You're still never going to achieve perfection. So just continue to work on getting better. And it's okay that you have some failings along the way. Learn from those and improve and get better.
That's how you really learn. All right, Michael, we've got one last question for you. Then we'll set you free to create some more iconic places in Providence. So, Michael, if you were writing the CEO playbook, tell us 3 things that you would share with other CEOs that you think they should be doing.
Get aligned with your leadership team. I think we've covered that. Formalize your communication. Everybody needs to know what you're doing. and then commit to the coaching process. You've got to be talking with the people that you work with every day. How can I help remove obstacles? What do you need? And then also being able to say, hey, I'm seeing this. We could improve on this. And being able to be open on what I could do better for this is not a blame game. And we had an all office meeting and just didn't love the graphic format that came out. And it's like, let's get together and talk about this. Ultimately, I'm responsible for what goes up in front for everybody else. So what do we need to do to improve the process? Can we ask for things earlier from people? Can we remove the amount of effort that they have to put in and have marketing teams? So like, let's work through it, but we've got to have better. So like that coaching and that working with them on a daily basis is so critical, and not being afraid to say it's you're doing this wrong, but like this is happening. We need to like solve this. Let's get better at how we solve it. So I just think that methodology, and you see it in people, they're all really willing to grow and learn with you.
That's fantastic. For your organization to be to that far level, you are doing what we call the coaching cascade. You're coaching your leaders, which then models coaching for them. So then they're coaching their team. And that's truly how you can grow and scale your organization.
Yeah.
All right. Michael, thank you so much. This has been so fun. I've got a bunch more questions. I could talk for hours, but John, why don't I turn it back to you to close this out?
Yeah. So Mike, thanks so much for spending time with us today. I'm excited about your journey as a I can't say CEO, your journey as a leader, your journey as a business owner, your journey as an impactor of people, right? I think all that stuff, your passion is palpable. I'm just so excited about where the organization's going. I agree with you. It kind of feels like there's a great energy about the organization today and passion for everybody working together. And I can't wait to see the results of how you're changing the world. So great stuff. And thanks for participating on our podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This was exciting to be able to do, and I look forward to listening in on them as well and getting together again in the future, and look forward to our quarterly, John.
Yep. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.